Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Poland Daily Travel. Tonight, we're going to be talking about vaccine passports. Is it something that's in our future? And is it a good thing or a bad thing, or just something we're going to have to learn to live with? On the horn, we have Harold von Kursk from Estonia. Hello, Harold.
Greetings, gentlemen. How are you today, Will?
Very well. I've got Phil Goss with me in the studio.
No.
I'm very well. Yeah. How's Estonia? Is it raining, sunny? What's going on?
Still beautiful weather thus far. The month of May is excellent.
Great. Pretty soon it's going to be light almost all night long. Listen, we were talking about vaccine passports at the end of the last segment, last episode. The thing is, some people are up in arms about overweening influence of the government and having to have a vaccine, not only just to travel, but then carrying around the vaccine card. It's an interesting subject. It's one that you can debate both sides equally well, but I just want to throw this out. I can remember going to, for example, Brazil, certain countries in Africa, and you have to have a vaccine, or several in some cases. You have to have hepatitis, for example, and I can't remember, maybe
Malaria.
Malaria, yeah, to go to Brazil. I had 2 or 3 jabs to go there, and you just did it because you knew it was for your health. How is this vaccine different, or is it?
I think in order to understand this vaccine, let's talk about vaccine requirements for travel in general. If you're going to Africa, you may want to have malaria, as we said, or some kind of other vaccines. If you're going to North America, there are certain things that you will want to be vaccinated against for going there or coming to Eastern Europe or anywhere in Europe, Central Asia. For example, when I was with the State Department, it was recommended that we have hepatitis C vaccinations, which is a 1 dose and a month later a 2nd dose, and then 5 months after that, get a 3rd dose. So sometimes these require significant planning to accomplish. But for my diplomatic service, I was vaccinated against hepatitis C to come to Poland or anywhere in Europe. The CDC has these recommendations for people traveling to places where you may have a higher risk of African sleeping sickness, malaria, what have you. And of course, it's up to you to get it done. Nobody's going to call you and say, well, you can't go on your trip because you didn't get your malaria vaccine. It's just good practice. This is different. And what we're looking at is maybe a legal requirement. Now, I've got, for example, a photocopy laminated of my vaccination card. Mm-hmm. I got this in Indiana in March. And it has the dates and the times. Absolutely. Yeah. Now, that's a photocopy that's vaccinated. I have the original in all of my COVID files where I had my positive test and my release from quarantine and my negative tests and my vaccination records and things.
It gives the dates when you had the 1st and 2nd shot.
Yes, it does.
And it says you had the Pfizer vaccination. I've got a card from my first dose. I haven't had the 2nd dose. I've got a card somewhat like this. Yeah, but I didn't laminate it yet. That's a good idea, actually.
Office Depot in the United States laminates them for free.
Yeah. Harold, would you care to weigh in on this, please?
Yes, I think, gentlemen, you're understating the importance of vaccinations with respect to COVID. I mean, this is a worldwide pandemic, and we're not going to get out of this dire situation until the population is 70 to 80% vaccinated. I think there should be an absolute ban on any travel of any kind for people who have not been vaccinated this year. You should not be able to get on a plane if you haven't been vaccinated. You should not be able to drive into another country if you have not been vaccinated. We will not get out of this until we achieve herd immunity, and we're not going to get to that point until we have 75% minimum vaccinations. People are underestimating how serious the pandemic is.
No, well, I'm not sure I agree with that. I think people know that it's serious. But again, it's only having serious consequences to a very small percentage of people. We know that by the figures of the CDC. Plus, there's a lot of dispute as to the contribution of COVID to people with already existing serious maladies. But, I mean, it's a good point. I don't know. This is exactly the question. Do we require everyone to have this, and how far? I mean, once you go to that extent, then what's the next thing the governments are going to be requiring you to do? Because we see each
Well, do you
time.
remember the polio vaccine?
Well, polio is a bit different, and
Why is it different? COVID kills you. Polio cripples you.
Polio is not transmittable in the same way. That's a huge
It's
difference.
infectious.
It's a huge difference. Yeah.
Yeah, then why was the polio vaccine mandatory for everyone in virtually every country that I know of? And we eliminated polio. If we don't do that with COVID, it'll keep cropping up again. That's the situation.
Well, we're not biologists, or microbiologists, but I haven't heard polio compared to this.
Well, I think the comparison
I'm talking about the issue of vaccination.
I think there's a comparison
but you
for
look
legal.
at things. Polio is at the least maiming, at the worst a death sentence. So it's much more serious on any scale than COVID. To the mass of the population, COVID affects certain people, certain types of individuals more seriously, and we know that. But polio could affect.
Regardless of the
anyone.
differences, I think the real
Including
question is one of legal and administrative law. At what point do we allow, and we've reached these questions and answers long before COVID. We have legal requirements for vaccinations for children, for the most part, except for those who still believe the anti-vaxxer mantra, which has been scientifically proven to be nothing. So we require this for small children, and that range of requirements varies from time to time, from place to place. Sometimes required vaccinations have been lifted. For example, the human papillomavirus, HPV vaccination, was eliminated because it was linked to cervical cancer. Mm-hmm. So again, and with all due respect to all parties involved, we still don't know a lot about this. We know that we're scared, and I question whether our decision-making is not tainted by our fear. We know that it's bad for some people, not for all people. The same as the HPV vaccination was bad for some young ladies and not bad for others. It's a little bit shorter a timeline on COVID than it is with HPV, a lot shorter. And so those results are clearer. But we still have this idea that we need to have a legal requirement for travel. Is that right? Is that wrong? I think that question is yet to be answered.
Yeah, it's exactly. Serious problem. We're getting the vaccine, and the advice is, of course, to get the vaccine if you can. Whether it should be mandatory is still an open question, but certainly it's a serious, very serious problem, as everyone knows. And herd immunity is a thing to be desired, isn't it? Yeah. Harold, thank you very much. That's the end of this episode. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the evening. And Phil, thank you here in the studio. Okay, thanks for watching.